Members, this is the appointed time. We have a quorum. So I call this meeting to order. Item 1, meeting with the administration. Let's invite the administration to come in now. We're joined by the same team from the administration, including the Deputy Secretary, Ms. Ivy Law, in fact, and Mr. Ansin Yu, Deputy Director from the FEHD, and also Ms. Wendy Au, Principal Assistant Secretary from the Environment and Ecology Bureau, as well as Ms. Wanda Lam, Department of Justice, and Mr. Yip, Senior Superintendent from the FEHD.
等陣呢，我就會等秘書長回應完。
The Deputy Secretary will first give a response, and then I'll open the floor for members to ask questions. Now, Deputy Secretary, please give a response to matters raised at the meeting of the 17th. When you're ready, yes? Chairman, members, good afternoon. I'd like to thank Chairman and members of the Bills Committee for for giving us their views at the previous meetings. At the last Bills Committee meeting, a member made a suggestion in relation to the removal of articles to tackle unlawful shopfront extensions. Now, it is said that for perishable items within 48 hours, the owner may make a claim with the FEHD. For non-perishable articles, then the claim period could remain at 7 days, and afterwards the items will be forfeited by the government if unclaimed, and then the claimant will be responsible to pay for the storage cost. Now, having discussed with the Department of Justice, if members agree, then we propose to replace the original proposal. In other words, the original proposal provides that the items or articles will be removed immediately, and that an amount of compensation will be made out, and this will be replaced. We've also been discussing with the sector representatives, chambers of commerce, as well as the Chinese medicine trade and also market vendors, and they are also supportive of the proposal. Subject to members' objection, we will be moving committee stage amendments during the resumption of second reading of the bill. Right, any further views in relation to the response just given? Please press the button if you want to speak. Mr. Peter Shiu. 4 minutes, questions and answers. Thank you, Chairman. I thank Ms. Law and Mr. Yu for the response. Last week, I made an arrangement for the trade associations to talk to the administration, and I thank the administration for heeding my views. Now, in relation to the perishable articles, I thank the administration for accepting my proposal, and that instead of immediate forfeiture followed by compensation, a claim can be made within 48 hours of seizure. This is in fact the views expressed by the sector to provide a level playing field for them to be able to claim the items within 48 hours. We believe that this should not pose additional burden on the public coffers. So I thank the administration for accepting my proposal, and I believe that the trade representatives, which I mentioned just now, will be very grateful. On the whole, we should strive to strike a balance, not to cause any obstruction to any public place and inconvenience members of the public, and that within a reasonable time frame, all operators should strive to clear the goods. And that if a claim is made within 48 hours, then the claimant will be able to retrieve the goods, and the claimant will also be paying for the storage. And I think this will be supported by the public in general. Any further response? Yes, I thank Mr. Shiu for being very helpful. He made an arrangement for us to meet with the trade associations and explained our proposal to them. Next, Mr. Stephen Ho. Thank you, Chair. I thank the government for their efforts. We support the legislative amendments as well. Apart from discussing with trade associations you mentioned, in fact, in the past few days, I personally went to the local communities to observe the enforcement actions carried out by the government. Now, there are still some concerns from various trades. Some members were not sure about the latest arrangements, and they approached me. I spent about 10 minutes explaining the latest proposal to them. And in fact, before today, I had known that the government would be making this change. So I spent some time explaining the proposal to them, but I think that the government should also enhance publicity and to explain their policy well to the different trades, especially for the street shops and vendors. Yes, thank you for your comment. We will follow up on Mr. Ho's suggestion. Right, any further questions on the reply just given by the DS? If not, we will further our discussion on the policy issues relating to the bill. Any other questions from the floor? If so, please press the button. Mr. Dennis Lam. Thank you, Chair. 4 minutes. After passage of the bill, I understand that at the front line there will be enhanced manpower to support enforcement. So my question is this. Will this lead to the existing service level being undermined? Will it pose extra burden on frontline staff? Do you need extra manpower to observe possible offences in order to tackle obstruction in public places? And this may compromise the capacity in fulfilling other duties. I just want to make sure that there will be sufficient manpower to take forward enforcement at the front line. What I don't want is that resources get pulled away after passage of the bill so that work is not done properly. In order to meet the latest requirements, the department may step up manpower for this purpose. And then the frontline staff may bear the brunt. They may be blamed by the management for not getting the task done. So how do you make sure that public demands can be met without adding too much to the plate of the frontline staff? Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Leung, for his comment. One of the objectives of this amendment bill is to enhance the efficiency of our enforcement. With additional provisions, we'll be able to do our work more efficiently, such as the notice of intended entry, that this will enable us to gain entry earlier. And also the FEHD will be able to act independently in obstruction cases. Now I'll give the floor to my colleague to say more on this. Now, responding to Mr. Leung's point on obstruction in public places, the crux of the bill is about putting in writing the previous arrangements between the police and the FEHD such that the FEHD will be able to act independently in tackling street obstruction. The bill does not give extra power in this regard. In the past 2 years, joint operations were mounted by the FEHD and the police, and shopfront extension problems have by and large been abated. We've also tackled some black spot and blacklisted shops. Now, the legislative amendments mean that the FEHD will be able to act independently without enlisting the help of the police. This will not cause additional burden to our frontline staff. I don't think this will be the case. Mr. Lam Chun Sing. Right, I also have a question on manpower. One of the provisions in the bill is that officers may gain entry into premises up to 10 p.m. That's not the current practice. For the frontline staff, they may work for, say, 8 or 9 hours up to, say, 6 p.m. And if there is a surge of cases happening in the evening between 7 and 10 p.m., say, though I don't think civil servants will have complaints about carrying out duties in the evenings, still, there may be implications in relation to manpower demanded at night. You still need to keep a pool of staff in the morning, so there must be manpower implications. Now, there is a prevailing manpower crunch, and it is understandable. And because of the tight fiscal position, you may not be able to expand the establishment. But what will be the implications on manpower? What is your estimate if we stretch out the day to the workday to 10 p.m.? Deputy Director, I want to emphasize that even before legislative amendments, in tackling nuisance cases, the FEHD will first contact the subject of the complaint. Very often, they will make way for our officers to gain entry. The problem is there is a need for our officers to carry out investigation at night in some of these cases. Now, the bill provides that our officers will be able to enter premises for investigation up to 10 p.m. With this bill, there will be greater clarity for our officers to gain entry into the premises. This can address the misunderstanding and disputes over the permissible hours of entry. About water dripping from air conditioners, indeed, in these cases, it's more effective to carry out investigation at night. So during peak periods, such as in the summer, our officers are required to work at night or even in the small hours. We provide a flexible work arrangement, especially during peak season like summer. We allow some officers to start their duties in the afternoon so that they'll be able to investigate cases at night. We also have some dedicated officers targeting water dripping cases at night. So depending on the workload and the characteristics of the district, we provide a flexible arrangements and we devise the best manpower arrangement. Next, Mr. Peter Shiu. Just now, two members representing the labor sector also expressed appreciation of the proposal. Let me reassure them. In fact, in the past 2 years, very often the FEHD officers would engage in disputes with the street stall operators. Sometimes we see crowds and police presence would be required. But like Deputy Director Mr. Yu said, in terms of the penalties meted out, the number has dropped by 80–90%. That means everybody is exercising self-discipline we have seen a drastic drop in the number of disputes. So as we need to pull the purse strings tight, then I think what is important is to reduce manpower as far as possible. And the Deputy Director also mentioned flexible deployment. What is important, of course, is to provide these officers with time off or overtime pay. I just want to reassure members that most of the vendors are exercising restraint.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chiu, for the opinion. Now, the hawkers, the officers responsible for hawkers are now taking up this kind of work, and we will look at the workload in order to deploy our manpower suitably. And then there are health officers and hygiene officers who will also be responsible for this as well. So we will be looking at the workload in deploying our people. Yes, Ms. Chen, please. Now, there is another area of this legislation, and that is where there are obstructions to the clearing of rubbish from the areas concerned. Now, sometime earlier, we have reported to the FEHD that in areas such as Tai Kok Tsui, there are some people who would want to collect and actually hoard articles which we may look upon as rubbish, but they may want to actually hoard and collect and store them under flyovers, etc. And also, now there are certain collection bins which are unnamed, collecting purportedly clothing, etc. Now, there is an enforcement issue, even with the FEHT. Now, to my mind, I think this kind of collection bins would actually obstruct your work in terms of making it difficult for you to clear the rubbish. But who is responsible for enforcement? That is a question. Now, the government may have different ways of answering the question, but to my mind, for something that is so big in size as in a collection or refuse collection bin, you would think that that perhaps belongs to the lands department in terms of reference. And no one foresaw that there would be the placing of these bins. But let's say if indeed these bins are collection bins and not rubbish as such, then would the FEHD be responsible? Who would be responsible, please? Thank you, Chair. Actually, the legislative amendment this time is to strengthen a power that is already in the hands of the FEHD. In clearing the rubbish, as mentioned, we will be providing a 4-hour time interval, which will be reduced to 30 minutes, notifying the persons concerned to remove the obstruction and rubbish that they have put onto the streets. Now, as a member had mentioned, it is correct. There are different types of obstruction, articles and rubbish on the streets, and we have different ways of tackling them. For the clothing collection bins, for example, as mentioned just now, of course, if the FEHD needs to effect cleansing and cleaning on the street and in the spot concerned, of course, that would be an obstruction. Then we would have to look at whether this is a public area, government site, and if it is a government site where the bin is located, then it may be illegal occupying government site. That is an offense. And we would have the relevant laws to resort to. And as mentioned, the Lands Department, FEHD, and the relevant departments will be working together to combat such situations and offenses. Chair, I'm pretty sure that these bins are unauthorized bins placed on the streets. And the two departments actually have used a lot of time, I can tell you, to clear these bins, but to no effect. But in the eyes of the citizens of Hong Kong, it's the same government. So what kind of legislation should be resorted to if this is an obstruction from clearing of rubbish? Would that be the offense? And which department should be responsible, lands, or is it FEHD? The citizens of Hong Kong are rather confused. So this is a reminder for the administration. And after the passage of this legislation, and if there are such offenses, as I have mentioned before, I would like to see the FEHD being empowered to clear the obstruction. Well, actually, Mr. Chair, in Mei Fu, there was a clearing of such a bin, as mentioned by Ms. Chan just now. And perhaps Ms. Chan is seeing other relevant or similar bins being placed, and we will certainly follow up on those violations. Mr. Chair. Right. On the removal of obstructive articles, this is nothing new, that I understand. But in amending the legislation, you want to improve on your work and you want to shorten the notification period. Let's say 4 hours is just too lengthy, so it's 30 minutes now. Now, what about the situation of where you receive a citizen's report of an offense? Will there be a app or a hotline where people can report offenses? That's the first question. Second question, now it is 30 minutes notification period, after which there will be removal of the articles. And I'm sure in Hong Kong there are a lot of articles waiting for you to be removed. Do you have sufficient space to place these articles, or will you be throwing them out right away? Third question, now 30 minutes removal, that's all very good. Can you tell me, in Hong Kong being so big, and you don't have all the ambit, FEHD, you are responsible for removal of obstruction. So basically, what particular areas will you be first targeting? That's my question. First of all, in answer to the question, there is a hotline 1823, and it has an app as well to handle reports and of offenses from the citizens. Now, as for collection of such articles, the legislation, existing legislation, carries a 7-day claim period, so that is not changed. And also in clearing rubbish in various areas in Hong Kong where there are such needs, we will be enforcing the law. All right, so any other questions concerning the policy aspect of the legislation, please, members? If there are none, then we go to the CSSA, we'll go article by article. And in doing so, if the legal advisor wants to remind our members of drafting issues or legal issues, you can press a button and raise your questions as suitable. And when the government is explaining the questions for members, would members please press the bell and to indicate that you would want to ask questions? Now, first of all, the Chinese version of the legislation, the legal advisor at the same time will be looking at the English version of the draft of the bill. So let us look at the blue bill. This is the CB 257/2024-404. And this is the blue bill for Public Health and Municipal Services Amendment Bill 2024. Right. For the title, and the long title, it is basically to amend the Public Health and Municipal Services Ordinance to strengthen the powers of the Director of FEHD and authorize officers to dealing and certain environmental hygiene problems, to introduce an offense targeting unlawful shopfront extensions, to increase the penalties for certain offenses relating to environmental hygiene, and to make related miscellaneous amendments to the ordinance and related legislation, and we specify it is enacted by the Legislative Council. Anybody? Mr. Ho? No. Right. There are three parts to this bill. The first part is preliminary short title and commencement. It lists the short title, which is the Public Health and Municipal Services Amendment Ordinance 2024. Bracket 2 says this ordinance comes into operation on the expiry of 3 months after the day on which it is published in the Gazette. And within those 3 months, we will be making publicity and education to the public as well as the shops and retailers concerned. Let's continue. Clause 2, enactments amended. So the content of this particular enactment is specified in parts 2 and 3. All right. So we have dealt with part 1 of the bill. Now let us go on to the marked up version. So 1710204 bracket 01. Would the government please go through the articles, and would the government please also explain the content? So this is part 2, cap 132, and we're at clause 3 of the bill. And it actually amends the definition. And so we are adding the words or articles. So this is for the purpose of dealing with houses that are filled with rubbish, and whether the articles concerned are noxious or obnoxious matter. So this is about that particular definition. Thank you, Chair. I just want to understand a little bit more concerning articles and substances. What basically would be the difference between the two, please? Because if we look at the C2316 in the Blue Bill, it talks about articles and other substances. So what is the difference between articles and substance? Would substance be subsumed, be included under articles? Well, actually, the two are different. Articles are more tangible. As for substance, it can be less tangible, but it would also be included under litter. And in 86F, when we talk about substance, we are really talking about shopfront obstructions, and these are actually different from litter, but they are the same wording. So you are referring to 86E. Well, 86E refers to the scenario of shopfront extensions and obstructions. But so you're saying that the same word denotes different things in different parts of the bill? Well, for litter, the substance, it refers to substance constituting a nuisance. And for shopfront extension, it is substance that actually cause obstruction. And it is because of the operation of the shops that there are these obstructions. Is your question answered, please? Now, we're talking about definitions here. When we define the wording, would it not cause confusion? Actually, that's my question. That is, the same words in different parts of the bill have different connotations. That is a question. Thank you. Thank you for the question. Thank you, Chair. For litter, the definition, we have also included articles. Right now it is substance.
So for soiled newspaper, is it a substance? On the face of it, it doesn't seem so. Now you mentioned 86E under shopfront extensions, you use the same term, substance, an article as well. But this is not the same part. For the part referred to here, an article includes any other substance, so includes both, but it's not dealt with the same way. When it comes to the definition of litter, we've added the term article in it. For shopfront extension, we spell out that an article includes any other substance in 86E. So just two different approaches, Ms. Doreen Kong. Thank you, Chair. Before I give you my take on the amendment to the definition of litter, I want to ask, first of all, in relation to garbage apartments, where do we find this term litter? Is it really necessary to amend this definition? I'm not too worried about shopfront extensions because in 86, you do not use the term litter. You simply use the term article. So I want to know exactly why you're proposing an amendment to the definition of litter. Right, I want to know why. Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Kong, for the question. In section 20 and 22A, you will find this term litter. That is, 20 refers to the area of, area for removing litter or for carrying out a cleansing operation. And 22A refers to preventing the recurrence of obstruction. So that is why we need to amend the definition to include articles as well. Right, I understand that we need to maintain consistency, right? Under Cap 228, that is the Summary Offences Ordinance, Section 4 relates to causing nuisance in a public place. And here it refers to mostly articles. In English, it is, the term matter is used. Well, the word substance is also used when it comes to, say, polluting a river. But mostly it's about articles. So that's about causing nuisance in a public place. So would the administration please review this? In terms of consistency with the Summary Offences Ordinance, when the same provision relating to causing a nuisance is made out. Yes. Now we understand Ms. Kong's point on consistency across all ordinances. It is equally important, however, that we consider enforcement of the provisions. Now, if we turn to Cap 132, and if we go specifically to Section 20 and 22, we look at articles or litter to be removed. And as per the existing definition, by merely including substance in the definition, there may be a misunderstanding. Say, as I mentioned, for used or soiled newspaper, then an average person may not consider this to be a substance. they would consider it as an article. To enhance efficiency of our enforcement, we need to spell out the definition clearly in Cap 132. That is, when we remove litter or when we carry out cleansing operations, as the ordinance deals with environmental hygiene, there is a need, therefore, to amend the definition, and I urge members to support us. I have a follow-up question. Now, I am being very careful about the government's proposal to widen the scope of this definition. In fact, if you take a look at D, you already have D. And then if you are referring to newspaper, then A provides for the paper. Now, as a legislator, I must be sure about this, not just to widen the scope as much as possible. I want to make sure that it is effective, because like I said, even in Cap 228, the definition is not as wide in scope. Now, why is it that you are amending the definition here to make it so wide? Let's go to the definition of litter, and that's F. Any substance likely to constitute a nuisance, and we change it to any substance or article likely to constitute a nuisance. We find it necessary to clarify subsection F in a sense that it covers not only any substance but also articles. There shouldn't be major impact on members of the public, because these are things that could be considered as litter. Now, I'm afraid I cannot agree. Under Summary of Offences Ordinance, Section 4.1 clearly provides that no dirt or no obnoxious article should be allowed to be accumulated in the occupier's premises. So again, the same term article is used. I don't want to get in the way. I just want to put it on record that I don't agree with this proposal. Mr. Benson, look. Chairman, I also like to make a point on the definition of litter. In 86G, removal of articles constituting unlawful shopfront extensions. I heard the administration explain that first and foremost articles here refer also to substance. Is that right? 86G, right? Removal of articles constituting unlawful shopfront extensions. Mr. Tony Chair had asked a question, I think. Let me go to the relevant page. I see the word article is being used here, and that article covers substance as well. I refer to 86E 2. In this part, a reference to an article includes B, any other substance. Right, understood. So that means the article includes any other substance throughout the bill. Is that right? No, it refers to Part 6A, shopfront extensions. Chairman, this is the Public Health and Municipal Services Ordinance. It relates to public health. At the moment, the Council is looking at other bills, and by comparison, this is a bill that will affect everybody in Hong Kong. So I think we should make the provisions as accessible as possible. We're just splitting hairs when it comes to these different terms, article, substance, items, etc. we're just referring to the same things. I think it's a waste of effort to provide for different definitions and different terms, especially for members of the public as readers. It's getting a bit more complicated. So I think we should clean up the drafting of the bill. We should make sure that the provisions are accessible and easy to understand. We don't want to split hairs here. Yes. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Lok, for the questions. I just want to supplement a point of information. We referred to litter. Litter means substance or articles that can be that will be disposed of, that will be discarded. But when it comes to shopfront extensions in Section 86E, article often are not those regarded as litter. They are part of the business. And that is why, for this part, we provide a specific definition, whereas for the definition of litter, we've proposed an amendment. Right. No other questions, please go on. DS. Clause 4 of the bill, Section 22 amended, prevention of obstructions to scavenging or conservancy operations. Now, if the FEHD considers that certain items may cause obstructions to scavenging on conservancy operations, then a notice can be put up, and after a period of 4 hours, any unclaimed items may be removed by the FEHD. Our proposal is to change the time frame of putting up a notice. You will find this notice period in 2, and that is after Section 22, subsection 2, we add a new provision 2A, and that is the period mentioned must not be shorter than 30 minutes. With this revision, the FEHD may have regard to actual circumstances when putting up a notice and may designate a time frame that is reasonable and longer than 30 minutes. Right, Ms. Doreen Kong? I want to know about the details of the notice, the content, please. I'll give the floor to the FEHD Deputy Director. The notice would be put up on or attached to the article to be removed. Let's say if the miscellaneous article is placed in a back lane, and if this is to be cleared in a scavenging operation, the FEHD can designate the area concerned and request that the owner remove the article for the purpose. And we can also put up a notice requiring the owner or the relevant person not to put the same article in the relevant location in the next 14 days to prevent our scavenging operation. Right, in the past it was 4 hours. Now you spell out the time frame on the notice itself. Now that means the content will be of utmost importance. Is it possible for notices to be switched? Let's say if I take this notice off and put it on another article, how do you differentiate the two? Now that the notice will contain a time frame for removal, it becomes important. And I suppose you have designed the format of the notice. Can you tell us what the format would be like? Does it come with a picture, for example? That's about the notice. And then in subsection 2A, capital A, must not be shorter than 30 minutes. When's the start time, please? It's, again, very important. Who would take this question, please? DS or Deputy Director? Thank you, Chairman. 30 minutes starting from the time we attach the notice to the article. So not less than no shorter than 30 minutes. That means depending on the circumstances, we may go beyond 30 minutes from the time of posting of the notice. For more straightforward cases, I reckon that our offices will be nearby anyway, and in that sense, I don't think there will be a high chance for the notice to be switched comparing to our existing 4-hour removal period arrangement. As for enforcement, our officers will also take pictures for record, and if need be, we can refer to the record for follow-up. Right, thank you, Deputy Director, for your explanation. Please don't let your officers stand there and watch. We are short of money. If you say that it's not shorter than 30 minutes, and if you have your officers on standby in the vicinity, it's really a waste of our resources. Make use of technology. Don't waste our manpower like that.
多謝。
Right. Next, Chair Wai-chun. Mr. Chair, I just want to understand the amended legislation a bit further. Now, it says here, if the articles are placed in certain areas and it obstructs scavenging or cleansing activity, then that would cause an offense. So that is how it is now. What I want to clarify is now you're asking the person to, within a specified period of time, to clear the articles. That is an offense. Or is it that the placing of the articles is not an offense in itself, but rather obstructing the government's clearing and cleansing of the area constitutes an offense? Is that true? Which one is it? Because I see bracket 21, it says it constitutes an offense. So what constitutes an offense? Well, Mr. Chair, where there is an obstruction of public area, obstructing the work of the FEHD, that in itself is already an offense. But in fact, right now, the FEHD would only give out a notice for removal when we find such articles. But there are situations where there is a repetition of the obstruction, where, for example, for commercial operations, the certain articles are placed in public areas repeatedly and with intention. And where the cases are serious and where there is a repeated obstruction, then we would be making prosecutions. But on the other hand, for obstructions that were cleared after the first notice, then we probably would not institute prosecutions. So, Chair, is it true that it is an offense just by placing the articles in a public area? But on the other hand, in making prosecutions, you're making it a bit more flexible. As for the cleaning or cleansing operations of the FEHD, you're providing a period, a notice period, and after which there will be actions taken. So, because people would be wary of the actions taken by the FEHD. So what exactly would be the more common scenario? How does it play out? Well, Mr. Chair, actually for Article 22, if there is anybody placing an article in the public area and obstructing the works of the FEHD, that in itself is already an offense and it's prosecutable. But in actual practice, the FEHD, where there is no habitual or repeated placing of such articles, we would post a bill to say that the person needs to remove the articles, and we would not follow up with a prosecution. But on the other hand, if the FEHD observes that there are such obstructing articles, there are two scenarios. One, the articles would be removed. Or secondly, after even posting the bill, there would be no removal by the person concerned, and the FEHD will have to move the articles for them. But if there is a claim within 7 days, then that is fine. Otherwise, if there is no claim within the 7 days, we will dispose of the articles. Now, the number of prosecutions are not numerous at all, and for any prosecutions, it would usually be repeated offences of placing articles in public areas, and these are the cases which would attract our prosecution. So I think we have to make this clear for all. If it is a repeated offense, then you would follow up with prosecution. If it is a one-off, then after you have removed the articles or the person had removed the articles, the person would not be prosecuted. Please make this clear for the public. Thank you. Ms. Kong? Mr. Chair, now, the notification period was 4 hours, and now it is 30 minutes. And so it will not be shorter than 4 hours. My question is, how long would you provide for the removal of the articles? Is it definitely 30 minutes? Well, thank you, Ms. Kong, for the question, Mr. Chair. In 2A there, we say no less than 30 minutes, so 30 minutes or above. So for each of the cases, how long would we provide? It really depends on the article concerned and also the assessment of our frontliners. Of course, there are work guidances from the FEHD to our frontline workers as well. Yes, Deputy Secretary General. And next we go on to the repeal of Section 47, bracket 2 title. So we repeal the wording, the provisions of subsection bracket 1 and substitute with subsection bracket 1 or bracket 1A. Mr. Lam. Thank you, Chair. Concerning bracket 2 and 1A and 1B. So I will leave my question to later. All right. Article 2, next. According to 47 bracket 1, the person blocking the area will have to take action within the specified period of time. And in bracket 2, we want to add a 1A to it, and that is under the principle of the owner for the persons concerned without limitation, if it appears to the authority that any common parts of premises are invested with vermin, the authority may by notice serve on the person responsible for the management of the premises. And we also suggest adding a new 1B, which is in subsection 1A, there are two types of persons that will be notified, where there is an owner's corporation to notify the owner's corporation, and where there is no such owner's corporation, the manager. And the manager means Cap 344 definition of the building. So that would be property management companies, for example, or anybody authorized with the management of the building or part of the building. So the notification can be served on the building management so that there can be effective actions against this vermin situation. 1A and 1B, Mr. Chair, would be the vermin extermination notice. In the past, you can only serve such notice on individuals. Now you are saying in your new amendment that the owner's corporation or the management corporation can also be served with this notice of elimination of vermin. That's my understanding. Now, in the past, in issuing these notifications, the numbers are really not numerous. For a year, it would be a few dozens, and for certain years, it can be as low a number as 10 notifications being issued. That's my understanding. I stand to be corrected. And for the ordinance, it doesn't specify very clearly under what circumstance would such notifications be issued. It basically just says that the public part of the premises may be invested with vermin. So that seems to be the condition for issuing notifications. My concern is that if you add the owner's corporation and the management company of the building, would it result in a situation where it would be more convenient for you to issue such notifications and there'll be more notifications issued? So would it also entail certain changing of conditions for issuing such notifications? For example, in the past, you already know that a certain area is invested with, let's say, rats, and you didn't know whom to issue a notification to. But now, with the management company or the owner's corporation, they can all be recipients of such notifications. So where an area is dirty or is vermin or rats invested, you will find it easier, more convenient to issue such notifications, and you will have more numerous issuance. Or have you changed the condition or prerequisite for issuing such notifications? Thank you, Chair. We thank Mr. Lam for the question. And the reason we have to issue such notifications is because we find that the area is invested with vermin or rats, and that's why we issue the notifications, and we do so as soon as possible to the relevant person or body concerned. Before the amendment of the legislation, we have to follow 47(1), and that is to issue the notification to the occupier or the owner of the premise. And it is true the number of issuances of such notifications were few and far between. But this time, we see that for public premises, public areas, and we look at the mosquito extermination practices, we can also issue such notifications to the bodies and persons responsible for public areas of the buildings and such areas. And that is very clear. These would be the owner's corporation. That would be first and foremost. Failing this, where there are no owner's corporation, then the building's management companies. So with that, it would expedite the entire process in clearing vermin infestation from premises and areas. Ms. Kong, next. Mr. Chair, I have a few questions. First of all, on 1AB, in 1AB, it talks about public areas where there is infestation of vermin. And you say that there will have to be an extermination. Why do you have to say the destruction? Actually, the wording is destroying and removing the vermin. Does it mean that I have to kill the rat by destroying the vermin? That's the first question. And second question, for some of the developments in Hong Kong, they're very big, and even public areas can be of different uses. Some public areas can actually be development common areas, and they can be very big in areas. Development common areas can be very big. Well, and there are different phases to that development as well. And if the rubbish is placed in a certain area, would it mean that all the buildings within that development will have to be responsible for these development common areas? because there may be even different management companies responsible for different phases or different buildings within the same development. What then? Right, to answer Ms. Kong's question, thank you, Mr. Chairman, concerning the destroying of such vermins. If you look at Article 27, destroying the destroying and removing any vermin. So this is following the wording. So the legislation is protected in its integrity. And further, for the issuance of notifications, we want to issue it to an addressee which is most likely to be able to remove the relevant offense or problem. So first we would target the owner's corporation, and failing that, the buildings management company. Now, Chair, just to share experience, for major developments, the so-called common areas may be very different. And I'm concerned about this particular drafting. Who is responsible for a particular common area? If I were a lawyer, I would look at the deeds and the sub-DMCs, and I would look at all the plans before I can specify who I need to issue the notifications to. It doesn't mean that if the common area is in phase 5 of the development, we will issue the notification to phase 5 body. Because it may actually be area shared by phases 4, 5, and 6.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Kong, for sharing her experience. She's made a very good point. Indeed, the features of common areas are different in different developments, but most likely there will be OCs. Our approach is to first issue the notice to the relevant OCs, and if none is identified, we will issue the notice to the manager. Right, I also have a question on 1B, and that is about OCs and the manager. Now, in a community, we know that there are OCs that are dormant. They are in essence defunct, albeit registered with the land registry. So how are you going to issue the notice in this case? For 3 new buildings, are you going to issue the notice to each and every owner? According to the bill, if there is an owner's corporation, then we are required to send the notice to the OC. Now, for private premises with vermin infestation, we will first conduct inspection on the spot. And very often during this exercise, we will be able to identify the responsible person. And we will then liaise with the property management company to make sure that they can contact the owner and resolve the problem. Now, we considered that the owners are primarily responsible for the problem. So in that sense, we should first issue the notice to owner's corporation, and if we're not able to identify one, to the manager. Right, but we have some aged buildings not having any management company. It may have an owner's corporation, but they are really zombie corporations without any operations. So if you can't find any party in charge, are you going to inform the owners, or what will be the situation? Right, thank you, Chair. You mentioned 3 new buildings at the outset. These are buildings without an owner's corporation or any owner's organization. Now, in that case, we have no alternative but to issue the notice to every owner. But like Chairman said, if you know about an owner's corporation, then we can issue this notice to the OC for the owners to follow up on it. Mr. Stephen Ho. Now, the other member mentioned the DMCs. I'm not going to repeat that. I see that there is a definition. It includes any building, structure, etc. Now, this happens on government land. If the government land has no development, very often it is hoarded with wire mesh fencing, and that there will be heavy vegetation followed by vermin infestation. Now, do you act on complaint, or do you handle the situation actively? And you mentioned that guidelines will be drawn up and that 14 days will be given as we discussed the garbage apartment cases to see if you have reasonable excuse or lawful authority. You can take this matter to the court. Now, let's say there are more complex situations. What about gutters? How much time should be given? What is regarded as reasonable? This is in fact about 1A here. Thank you, Chair. Now, the member asked about government land or premises under the management of another department. Then for vermin infestation, the matter will be referred to the relevant department for handling directly. If need be, we can provide support, and that's not the same as issuing statutory notices here. Now, about the time frame, we believe a period of 7 to 14 days to be reasonable. The party involved may need to engage a company or a consultant. It may take time for the debris or articles to be removed in order to address the infestation. So we need to have regard to the actual situation in each and every case in deciding what is reasonable. What is important is that if we consider that the vermin infestation already constitutes a nuisance affecting others as well, then we will adopt a more stringent approach. But then if according to the actual situation more time is needed to address the problem, we may allow a longer time frame. Right to follow-up question. The first one is for the SAR government to address, but I want to stress that even for private lots, there may be the similar problems of deserted plots or heavy vegetation. Does it mean that you act on complaints? Let's say if you have a landowner and that the piece of land is so large, and then you have rodent infestation and it happens in the wild, a lot of expenses may be incurred. I want to have your take on this. And second, about 7 to 14 days for more complex structures or places with misconnection of drainage and sewers, and also rodent infestation is particularly serious underground. It's not possible to trace the origin. It may not be easy to address a problem even in 3 months. So how is the government going to address this? Now you have this defense, reasonable excuse. That means there is time for you to discuss with the government what should be done. But by then a notice has already been issued. Right, complaint is one way for us to identify the vermin infestation. Now this is a bill about public health and municipal hygiene. So when it comes to private premises, we need to first consider whether the infestation would constitute a nuisance to members of the public. Complaints from members of the public is one way to help us identify the problem. Say if it happens in the private premises, then neighbors nearby may lodge a complaint about infestation, and we will then go to make observations and issue notices if necessary. Another typical example is for an aged building to have the light well, and then there may be some articles or debris accumulated in the area. Clearance of the debris is necessary, and we make it very clear that it's for the owners to conduct the clearance operation. We haven't come across a lot of such cases, but on the whole, we are very clear about the area to be cleaned. We're not talking about the large swathe of land. We're usually talking about an old building, an old shopping mall with articles causing obstruction. Right, the crux of the matter, Chairman, is whether premises or area of the premises cover the underground pipes as well. Well, premises usually cover the structures as well as the fittings inside. We will spell out our requirement to the OCs or property managers, etc. We are very clear about what items should be cleared, and it will be quite straightforward for them to follow. Now, it will be complicated if we just say address the infestation at your premises. Usually, after on-site inspection, we will issue some very specific instructions. Ms. Kong, Chairman, I spot something else. Here, it says verminous premises. What is meant by verminous premises? Now, Chairman, I'm looking at the definition of vermin or verminous premises here. On page 12 of the marked up copy, 0012, just go back to few pages before this. I think we need to consider the definition of vermin. It includes rodents and includes cockroaches, etc., etc. That's the English definition. Why do we need includes rodents and also includes other things? This is bad English. We want to improve the legislation and step up public hygiene. So it is important that we consider what is included. Vermin doesn't include bees, etc. Now, does it mean that it only covers the species mentioned here? The other point is that in section 47(2), it says that if the person fails to address the problem stated on the notice, then the authority may step in and conduct work, and that you may recover any expenses thereby incurred from such person. But you also make it clear that you are not going to recover the expenses from the manager. Now, for manager, it covers a very wide scope. It covers owners corporation as well as professional property management companies. Now, in 2B, it says that you will carry out works, and then in 2B you also provide that you may not recover the expenses from the manager. Does it mean that you are forking out money from your own pocket? And if that is true, definitely I am not going to take action. I will wait for the government to step in. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Kong, for the questions. I will first explain the definition, and then I will give the floor to the FEHD to say more on this. Now, vermin here includes cockroaches, mites, ticks, bugs, fleas, etc. We sought advice from the Department of Justice. Now, this is not an exhaustive list. Deputy Director, about recovering the expenses. Our consideration is that the manager or the property management company has a service agreement with the owners. So we don't find it appropriate for the service provider to shoulder the cost. So if the authority steps in to address rodent infestation for the expenses incurred, ultimately the authority will recover the expenses from owners. Right, I understand that it is not reasonable for property management companies to cover the costs. But what about owners? Why can't you take it after? Go after the owners' corporations, because here you use the term manager. In Cap 344, it covers IOs and DMC managers. So at least you should recover the expenses from the owners' corporations, if not the property management companies. Deputy Director. Now our position is about property management. Owners are primarily responsible for managing the properties and preventing vermin infestation. For common areas of buildings, PMCs, OCs may be instructed to take actions. Now this is a quicker way of dealing with the problem. For common areas with very clear ownership, or involving multiple ownership, then the expeditious way is to approach the OCs or the PMCs to deal with the problem, and then we can recover the expenses from the owners. So that means you can go after the owners.
But Chair, 2A doesn't say so. 2A says that there will be no recovering of expenses from the manager. And within meaning of Cap 344, manager can include the owner's corporation. Can you go back and look at this a little bit more? Chair, I can clarify as follows. If you can refer to 47.8. And that is persons responsible, the definition of persons responsible. And that would include the owner's corporation. Where there is no owner's corporation, then the owner of the premise. And please also refer to 47.6. It says that any expenses that have been incurred may be recovered from the person in charge of the premises. And therefore, with this, the owner's corporation or the owners of the premise can be resorted to in the recovery of the expenses concerned. Next question, Chair Wei-Chun. Mr. Chair, concerning recovery of expenses, I have the following question. As the Secretary had mentioned just now in the answer, and also actually I've asked a previous question along similar lines, and that is the owner concerned should be responsible. But let's say if there are articles placed in the areas causing verminous situations, if all owners are therefore responsible for the expenses incurred in removal, wouldn't that be unfair? Because the perpetrator, if it is easily found, the perpetrator should be made responsible. But this situation, especially where there are certain tenants or owners who are very bad in their intentions, they actually would bring other owners, even for 3-0 buildings, bring other owners into the formula, and that is the others will have to foot the expenses for him as well. Well, Mr. Chair, we will target the entity or the person that causes the problem. So we would want to resolve the problem at source so as to resolve the public premise situation. We would try to target the perpetrator concerned. All right. Perhaps the administration can answer the subsection 2, that is 47 bracket 2 amendment first. So 47 bracket 2 for the new 1A, we want to specify now, and 1A refers to the public areas of buildings and the management of such areas. So whether these are for premises or vessels, the owners are mentioned in 47 bracket 1. And for 1A, as mentioned just now, it refers to the management of common parts of such premises. Ms. Kong, Mr. Chair, I want us all to pay attention. Now, just now, we were talking about 47.6. You said that the owners will have to pay, but it is not so. If you look at bracket 1A and bracket 1B and bracket 2A, you are referring to public areas. And then when it comes to 4A, 4B, and 6, you're referring to premises. You cannot use 47 bracket 6 to resolve the issue arising in 47.2 because one refers to premises, the other refers to public areas. So the government, if you have under 47.2, you have removed certain articles and incurred expenses. You cannot refer or resort to 47 bracket 6 because 47 bracket 6 refers to premises. So it is irrelevant. So look at 47, the new bracket 6. It refers to subsection 4. And subsection 4 refers to premises. And that is clear. You target the owner. But this is not public areas, as in 47 bracket 2. So private premises and public areas are put side by side, and this is confusing. I don't want to waste everybody's time here. I urge the authority to go back and look at this again. Chair, thank you, Ms. Kong, for the opinion. We will be asking our legal advisor to look at this, and where necessary, we will have a written response to this. For the new 2A, Mr. Chair, it says that the managers of the building will not be served notice for recovering the expenses, but the owner, we can ask the owner to recover the expenses. So the 2A, the new 2A, refers to the manager of the building. Mr. Chair, I urge the authority to look at the 2024 legislation in terms of definition of manager. Manager is defined very widely, and it is not as mentioned in the new bracket 2A. Please go back and look at it, the definition of manager. 47 bracket 2B. For 47 bracket 2B, the authority can execute or cause to be executed any work necessary to satisfy the requirements of the notice and may recover any expenses thereby occurred. And under 47 bracket 3 and also the newly added bracket 2A, it refers to well, basically, it also is related to the new clause 5. And basically, 2A, the new 2A says that if the notice concerned is served in respect of any premises that are a building or part of a building, the authority may not recover such subsection bracket 2, bracket B, any expenses from the manager within the meaning of cap 344 of the building or parts of the building. So we think that it is more appropriate to recover the expenses from the owner's corporation, or where there are no owner's corporation, then the occupant of the premises or the owner of the premises to basically recover the expenses. Yes, yes, the authority, would you please continue? Yes, bracket 6, 47, bracket 4. Under bracket 4, it says, notwithstanding anything contained in this section where it appears that any premises or vessel or any premises are invested with vermin, then the authority may, without serving a notice forthwith, take reasonable steps to destroy or remove the vermin. So this is the bracket 4. Next, we go on to bracket 7, which basically deletes the 47 bracket 4A wording, and the wording is actually moved partly to the new 4D, and it is in clause 8. If we look at clause 8, it refers to 47 bracket 4, and that is where there are premises or vessels with vermins, the authority can place traps for and bait containers, etc., to trap such vermins. So we want the authority to be able to place these traps or bait containers and also to assess the vermin infestation situation. Under 47 bracket 4 and 4B, it says that for the placing of these traps or to the assessment of the baits, etc., to make assessment of the verminous situation, there cannot be any structural alteration made to the premises concerned or the vessels concerned. And there may not be any moving of fixture, furniture, equipment, etc., causing unreasonable inconvenience to the occupier of the premises or vessel. Mr. Chair, what we're trying to resolve here is garbage premise or flat situation. But let me just refer to my question is about the notification. You say that in the notification, you will have to take reasonable steps to exterminate or destroy the vermins. So would there be a time period allowed for so doing? And a second question for premise. The premise may be within a building. And these very dirty premises, sometimes the vermins actually are active not just inside the premise but outside of the premise as well. With your drafting right now, would you be able to include the areas outside of this premise? And also for other areas, the drafting is more straightforward, and that is the person concerned will have to clean the premise. The vermins or the rats may be destroyed or killed, but the owner of the premise will have to be requested to disinfect and cleanse the entire premise and the area. Will you be covering those as well? Well, thank you for the question, Chair. Under bracket 4, it already says that the authority may take reasonable steps to destroy, remove such vermins. As for the cleansing of the premise, that should be part of reasonable steps. Mr. Chair, I very much disagree with that view. Well, if we go to the court, I would object to that kind of definition, because if you look at the wording, it says to take such reasonable steps as may be required to destroy or remove the vermin. I can just kill the, let's say, 100 cockroaches. It doesn't say that I have to, as a owner of the premise, clean that area. So if you look at Section 47 of the Environmental Act of Singapore, you can see that it is very clear, very direct, and very comprehensive. And cleansing of the premise is included as well. Chair, we thank Ms. Kong for the opinion. And under 14.1, it says that the relevant premises or vessels, the relevant part will have to be cleaned. So there is this requirement of cleansing the part of the premise and vessel. So under 47 bracket 1A, it says the cleansing or cleanse the common parts or part of the common parts within the period specified in the notice. That's under 47.1AA. So my question is, why do you delete part of 4? And why are these put in different parts of under clause 47?
Thank you, Ms. Kong. Subsection 4 refers to something else. Now, in fact, the practice is that we issue a notice to the relevant person. If the person refuses to take action, the authority will step in. The FEHD will then take action, perform the operation, and then recover the expenses. Now, for this part, because of the urgent situation, for some various reasons, we do not issue a notice. Then, as per subsection 4, we are allowed to recover the expenses so that we won't be taking action on their behalf for free. So subsection 4 refers to situations where no notice has been issued, and it says without serving a notice, forthwith take reasonable steps so and so. Now, in fact, if we take a look at 4B, we provide that during the cleansing operation, the authority may not move any fixture or make any structural alteration. Right, so be it. If in that case, you must not perform any cleansing operation under subsection 4 and recover the expenses, because it says here that steps will be taken to destroy or remove vermin. Now, I thank you for telling me about subsection 1, but here in subsection 4, the scope is not as wide. Please don't cleanse on anyone's behalf, or I'm worried that you may not be able to recover the expenses. Right, let's move on. Let's move on to 4B. We move 47A to here. After the amendment, after the placing of any equipment for conducting tests or assessing vermin proliferation, the authority may not make any structural alteration to the premises or vessel or move any fixture or any fittings, furniture, or equipment of a substantial nature, and may not cause any unreasonable inconvenience to the occupier of the premises. Yes, please continue. Ms. Doreen Kong. Any fittings, furniture, or equipment of a substantial nature is quite strange. In the English version, it's even weirder. What is meant by any furniture of a substantial nature? Can you give me an example? Why don't you just say large? Why don't you just say large? Why is it worded like this? furniture of a substantial nature. Do you mean that is a physically big piece of furniture, or is it an important piece of furniture? Well, it covers not just premises, it covers vessels as well. And on a vessel, there may be something of a substantial nature or substantive. Considering the actual situation, we propose to draft this part in this manner. Well, there may be different scenarios of something being substantial. Now, let's say, forget about vessels. Let's say if you go inside an apartment, a garbage apartment, how do you assess whether the fitting furniture equipment is of a substantial nature? Is it a refrigerator? Is it a television? What are the criteria? Right, yes, thank you, Ms. Kong, for the question. Let me explain the wording used. As Ms. Kong has noticed, we follow Section 47(4) in terms of the actual wording. We find the existing practice or existing provision effective. Now, this is not a rewriting exercise. We are just moving the provision from one section to another. So following that, we adopt the same diction, as you can see, for consistency purpose. Now, you mentioned examples of furniture of a substantial nature. I can say, for example, some cupboard units mounted on the wall. Chairman, I don't agree that we should just copy from the existing provision. I don't think it's well established or effective. Legally speaking, if the cupboard is mounted onto the wall and then it's fitting, not furniture. For equipment, we also have a very clear definition from case authorities. So what exactly is meant by of a substantial nature, Deputy Director? Well, we haven't come across many cases invoking Section 47. For cases that we've actually come across, we usually issue notices to owners. Now, as a typical case, we usually require the owners to fulfill their responsibilities first before the FEHD steps in. For Section 47 here, the typical scenario is a vacant flat, and if there is vermin infestation, we'd like to tackle that as quickly as possible. There are reasons why this owner cannot be traced. And in fact, referring to fittings, furniture, equipment of a substantial nature, I can't recall having come across such a case. But we do require our colleagues to discuss with the headquarters should there be any doubt. Please continue. Next, clause 9, subclause 9. Amending Section 47. At the moment, any person without lawful authority or reasonable excuse knowingly removes, destroys, or otherwise interferes with the trapping device is guilty of an offense. Now, under our proposal, the equipment will also include interferes with the equipment for assessing vermin infestation. Please continue. Subclause 10. After Section 47(5), we will add new subsections 6 to 8. if the FEHD has incurred expenses under subsection 4 in a vermin extermination exercise, then expenses may be recovered from the person in charge. And that this provision seeks to prevent anyone exploiting the service without paying charges. Ms. Doreen Kong. I'd like to stop here. Section 47, bracket 6. It says, if any expenses have been incurred in exercising a power under subsection 4, right? Subsection 4 refers to gaining entry to address infestation. Then why is it that for 4 capital A, the authority may also place equipment for conducting tests or assessing vermin proliferation? So why don't you include 4 capital A under subsection 6 as well? Why are you just putting down subsection 4 here? Because otherwise, how are you able to recover the expenses under 4 capital A? Now, for placing of equipment for conducting tests or assessing vermin proliferation, the purpose of the exercise is to help FEHD assess the vermin infestation situation in the premises. It's not part of the extermination exercise for the FEHD to recover the expenses incurred. Right, earlier, in fact, we answered the legal advisor's question. We explained the policy objective. In terms of assessment or surveillance, we don't recover the expenses incurred. Chairman, I'm afraid I can't agree. We are short of money. Now, let's not forget that it's the owner's responsibility to make sure that there is no vermin proliferation in their own premises. That's under capital 4A. Now, if Section 4 is fulfilled, you won't go on to 4A, and that means the flat is already so dirty that a cleansing operation is needed, and that is why you assess the vermin proliferation in 4A. I don't know why it is your policy objective not to recover the expenses for the assessment. I don't agree. I think for 4 and 4A, you need to recover the expenses incurred. Thank you. As explained, in terms of vermin assessment is part of the FEHD's portfolio, we don't think that it is most appropriate to recover the expenses from members of the public. Please continue. Right, subsection 7. For the purposes of subsection 6, in terms of recovering expenses for vermin elimination, if the case involves 2 or more persons, then all of them are jointly and severally liable for the expenses. Subsection 8. In light of the various amendments mentioned, we will provide for the definition of certain terms under Section 47, and they include common parts, owner corporation, person in charge, and Cap 344, which relates to building management ordinance. We also have a definition for person in charge. For common parts, it refers to the owner's corporation being in charge of the common parts, and void of owner's corporation, the owners. Part 6. That's after Part 6 of the existing Ordinance Cap 132, we will add Part 6A, shopfront extensions. These are new provisions. First, on 86E, we will add definitions for a number of terms: business, public place, and shop. Mr. Tony J. Chairman, my suggestion is this. we have Roman numeral and other numerals. So perhaps we should first clarify. Just pause to let us know what you're referring to. And then 86E, we earlier discussed the word substance and article. We spoke at length about the differences between substance and article. So, are there ambiguities here? Yes. Thank you. There is a reference to article, such as subsection 2. In this part, the reference to an article includes, and then any other substance. In the latter provisions, such as 86F2 or A2, causes, suffers, or permits any article to be placed or otherwise left in a public place. Again, a reference to article. As I mentioned, for shopfront extensions, usually articles are not regarded as litter. They're usually goods.
Right,
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, the Roman numeral and the alphabet, perhaps please clarify to make sure that they are separable. Right. Ms. Kong. Chair, for 3B, it says the perpetrator, the operator of the business, and it says the person who has or appears to have control or management of the shop. What is meant by appears to have control or management of the shop? What are you thinking about when you say that, please? Mr. Chair, in appearing to be so, in certain circumstance, for example, inside the shop, the person may be an agent of the owner of the shop. So that particular person in the shop is not someone who has control of the shop, but it just so happened that the person is inside the shop at the time, but in fact is just an agent of the owner of the shop or the person who has control of the shop. Chair, what about the shops that we see nowadays, which are basically housing clawing machines for small toys? So for the person who is running that shop, do you see that person as someone who appears to have control or management of the shop? Now, Mr. Chair, if the person is responsible for putting the small toys into those clawing machines, then we would take that person as a person who has or appears to have control or management of the shop. Well, I get it, Mr. Chair. Please continue. 86F. Offense of shopfront extension. This is a drafting. A person commits an offense if the person, without lawful authority or reasonable excuse, places or otherwise leaves any article in a public place, or causes, suffers, or permits any article to be placed or otherwise left in a public place, or the article so placed or left causes or may cause obstruction, inconvenience, or danger to the public, then the person is committing an offense. Now, before the amendment, the legal advisor had also asked whether this is an offense. Well, we are referring to 4A, Cap 228. The FEHD will have to rely on the powers of the police in order to tackle such offences for shopfront extension. So by inserting this wording, we would want to empower the FEHD for offences of shopfront extension. So is this an offence? Well, actually, we are using the standard under CAP 2284A. So according to what we have learned from the Department of Justice, for the intention of violation from the offense is not included. So basically, we are following Section 4A of CAP 228 here. Please continue. Mr. Chair, in answering our question, for offense of shopfront extension, the administration told us that they refer to Section 4A of CAP 228. And in the law court may refer to precedents and conduct analysis to see whether this is a serious offense. So what is most important is to find the legislative intent. And without the legislative intent, then this would be unclear. So this is for members' information. Please continue. 86G, which is newly inserted, removal of articles constituting unlawful shopfront extensions. Hold on, Ms. Kong. Well, Mr. Chair, just now the legal advisor said that it is uncertain. So for 86F, is it or is it not? The legal advisor had just raised a concern. We have to follow up. Well, for the shopfront extension offense, we have put it in CAP 132, and there is no intention to change the summary offense procedures CAP 228 shopfront extension standards and also the penalty. We have no intention of changing that. We only want to empower the FEHD to independently remove those articles. And therefore, we have sought the opinion of the lawyer to see whether the intent, the intent for offense under CAP 2284A is consistent with the drafting here. And the offense of shopfront extension, penalties, its handling basically is consistent with CAP 2284A. We are satisfied with that. Mr. Chair, I very much would like to thank the legal advisor in her opinion. Because when in drafting a piece of legislation, you cannot ask people, the reader, to refer to another piece of legislation. I'm just looking at 86F. You're trying to penalize people. You're not just asking people to clear the area. So because we are creating an offense, we are saying that the person has committed an offense, and that has to be very clear. It has to be very serious in terms of our dealing with it, because you're creating an offense, and that has to be clear. Chair, I don't want to waste everybody's time. I'll just write in with that request. Yes, Mr. Leung. Chair, concerning the intent to commit an offense, if you look at 86F bracket A, it says a person commits an offense if the person without lawful authority or reasonable excuse, places or otherwise leaves an article in public place. So, and this is in the course or in connection with the carrying on of a business in a shop. Well, Mr. Chair, perhaps I was not clear just now. The lawyer had told us that there are no precedents under 4A of Cap 228 concerning the intention of committing an offense, whether this is a strict liability offense or not a strict liability offense. Ms. Kong, do you want to follow up or would you be writing in? Right. In terms of time for this meeting, we have another 5 minutes. And under 86G, we have quite a lot to handle. So perhaps we leave it to the next meeting. And we will end the meeting here. And after discussions with the administration, we will set another date for the next meeting. And we will notify you of the time of the next meeting. Thank you very much for coming.